But for us, data modeling is a lot about controlling, given a reasonable amount of options that create a nice user interface. Today we're talking about data modeling. What is data modeling? Is this even an official term? Is it something we came up with? It's something in between. I think data modeling is a term, but we have a very specific definition of what data modeling is for us.
Exactly. So whenever we have again, we use WordPress, we have our starter theme, and we get custom projects, custom requirements, websites that need to be built in a certain way. And WordPress by default offers a couple of data models, right? Or a couple of, they call everything a post or a post type. And there are two built-in post types that the editor usually interacts with. And this is the post and the page. And they have distinct utilities or distinct attributes. And then you normally in each post or page, you have especially the post content, where all of the text, the copy goes in, and then you have also additional data that is attributed, like the title, the featured image, a publish date, and so on. So this is what we call this is for us the given data model, right? And we want to extend it in a way that it is perfectly fit to our client's needs. And this is usually, the first thing is our components, they have certain fields to them as well, and options, things where you can enter content or things where you can change options. And then, of course, we a lot of the times also extend the given post types with custom posts. Sometimes we even do custom tables, custom database tables, to store data even more structured and more optimal. And this is kind of what we call data modeling, where in the beginning we think about the concept, we go through the designs, we see what components we have, and then we define a data model that we need to implement. So, and then we're done.
Yeah, that easy.
Easy.
In our proposals that we write, we always have one item, which is data modeling, and where we say that we set up all the post types, the data structure for the backend, and so on. I'm not 100% sure if we always do it exactly like that. It's not a process that just starts and is finished and then never touched again. It also evolves over time with the project. For example, data modeling can also be part of individual components and parts of a page, where you think about the fields that you add in the back end for the editor, and then you notice that at some point you might need an additional field or an additional option, or you want to rearrange things to make them easier to structure, easier for the editor to work with. So for me, it's also a little two sides. One side of data modeling is more the technical part of how should we organize this in terms of database models, kind of, or how the data is structured in WordPress and how I can access it. And the other is, thinking from a user point of view, from an editor point of view, on how the options are presented, what options are presented and how they are presented, including sometimes labels for fields, for checkboxes, for making things unambiguous, basically.
Yeah. And in the past, there was a time where we actually did all of the data modeling up front, right? So there was the data modeling expert, and he or she would sit down and go through everything, create all of the post types, all of the components, or all of the fields for the components, and so on. Mm-hmm. But we've noticed that this is usually this takes way too long in the beginning. And this is more like a waterfall approach, right? Than a agile or iterative approach, where actually you give the developer the power to also create a data model, change a data model very easily, right? Mm-hmm. Of course, as you said, you always have to take into account like the usability in the end for the end user, and this is something that you have to learn. Not everyone, everyone needs to learn that, and a lot of the times we've also seen when you start with it that from a developer side you try to make things overcomplicated, right? Mm-hmm. Too many options, too many configurations, and we want to strip things down and make it optimal for the end user. Mm-hmm. And I think we do have a awesome solution for our data modeling, and we are heavily reliant on ACF, Advanced Custom Fields, mm-hmm. to do most of the data modeling. Of course, ACF doesn't. Well, I think they are actually including some like custom post type definition stuff now. But for us, we are not using ACF how you're supposed to, kind of, with the admin UI interface, and then use like JSON sync or some sort of syncing between environments. But we define everything in code. And I think this is like the awesome part about it, right? So with just defining configuration arrays, sort of, you say field X validate this, maybe add like hooks or something to get the data in, you can in code as a developer easily define what kind of data the end user should enter and where.
Yeah.
And this is like super awesome.
And it's a configuration. It's not, most times it's not like actual coding, like you don't have to write your backend code. And I think that's so great, especially because many people coming from a classic CMS background, many times there are backend developers coding the backend functionality and integration for the CMS. And then there are front-end developers coding only the front-end. And then this is brought together. And for us, this is very integrated, kind of, because every front-end developer, even if their main skills is HTML, CSS, maybe a bit JavaScript, even they, like, for them, it's rather easy to create those back-end fields because it's just an array of items that you create. And in some scenarios, I think even front-end developers are in an advantage because it's more about like thinking about crafting that interfaces on how you nest those fields, how you group them, what options you give, what labels you choose, and so on. Whereas someone with a backend development background mostly thinks more about the actual structure of the data and how to most efficiently organize the fields and to add options, as you said.
And how to not or how to always reuse stuff and not like copy code, but like make things more modular and so on. Yeah. But again, I think this is where also Flint really excels, right? And I don't want to like say ACF is like the only solution or it's like the best solution out there. For us, it's the best solution. And I think we're always in like this weird position because we have a open source framework, right? Or an open source starter theme, but we make heavy use of a paid plugin because while ACF is free, we need like the best feature sort of, or the main feature comes with the flexible content field from ACF, which is only part of the pro version. So we have thought many times about switching ACF to something free. But until now, we weren't able to find an adequate replacement and didn't want to write something ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is, we talked also a lot about Gutenberg before and how cumbersome, to be honest, or how like hard it is to write custom blocks because you need to know React. You also might need to know the PHP side of things. So it's like a lot that then you need the build process and so on. And with ACF or the setup also in Flint, as you said, any front-end developer can go in and define fields. easily via configuration. For me, it feels like a little bit like GraphQL, right? So where as a front-end developer, you define which fields you want to get. And for that, you define a query. And basically, now imagine you just, in this query, you have to add a couple of like metadata, for example, like what field type it is and the label. And then you have our field definition. So that's like super cool. And I don't think in terms of developer experience that anything beats that currently.
Yeah.
And there has been like, we talked about this before as well, like the Fields API, which is like a project from WordPress core, or a project that was started like 5 or 6 years ago, then stopped, and it's been picked up now again. That wants to like unify an approach to defining meta fields, or not meta fields, that's wrong, but data fields. So because there are 1,000 plugins that actually provide something similar, like ACF, right? And 1,000 approaches, and everyone who's working on WordPress on a larger scale either uses one of these plugins or has written his or her own. So unifying like the underlying API and a way to define these fields would be a major step forward for WordPress in terms of developer experience and unifying different approaches.
Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe for those watching this on YouTube, I can even like show something, just like to give an overview of how this looks like, defining fields. I just opened the Flint repo on GitHub, and there we have a component called block image text. So a component where we have text on one side and an image on the other side. And then there's a functions PHP file within that component folder. And then there is just the configuration array to define the fields. So we're creating a tab. This is an UI interface to have multiple tabs in the back end. And then defining an image is as easy as defining a label for, in this case, the image position, with a name, with the type. So that's the type of UI element, and then the choices. So this will create, I think, some radio boxes, and then you can choose image left or image right. And all this does is like, it creates this UI in the backend, and it will save the data. And when the component is rendered, I'm just getting that information, whatever data the user chose in the backend. And then there's an image field next to upload the image. We can add the preview size, define the preview size, add some instructions just like for the user, which formats are supported, for example, because we chose to only allow JPEG and PNGs. Oh, and SVGs actually here. But yeah, you can add a WYSIWYG field and so on and so on. So it's just, really easy to define those in code. Of course, it's probably even easier to do that in the backend UI, but we don't use that because we want to persist the fields also in the backend, right? In the code base. We won't want them to change easily. There's also the feature of exporting and syncing fields with JSON in ACF. But the major problem still there is that, how I understand it, it creates fixed field IDs, right? For field groups, for components that you create. So you can't easily reuse them. And that's core of our approach, that when we create a component, that we create those fields for just this component. We want them to be usable in various contexts. And this is what you wrote the ACF field group composer for, right? That we don't, that you don't have to create or provide a unique ID, but that you can skip that step and have flexible, reusable fields.
Yeah,
is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, after we have written this plugin, there was a new field introduced called the clone field. With it, you can do something similar, but not exactly the same. There's also like another tool for like fluidly defining or giving you like a fluid API for defining ACF fields. This is also something that might be worth looking into. But because we are coming from, well, first of all, we are coming from like a totally configuration-based approach in Flint. We had like just JSON, or in this, like it was actually season, so CoffeeScript and JSON files that where we defined our configurations. But with our approach, you are really you're completely as close to the original API of defining things as you can. You just have to leave out the field key, which is automatically created from you, and then you can like mix and match things and copy like definitions and so on to other places. And this makes it like really flexible for us to use these field definitions either inside of a group or inside of a flexible content field or anywhere like you want. I just wish that there was like a free a tool that provided all of this functionality and that is well maintained, because this would like save us a lot of headaches when promoting Flint and when getting people to use it, right? Because in the past, actually, the pricing model of ACF was really conservative, to say the least. So we still have like a lifetime license for our agency to like use it on any number of websites, and we have it since, I don't know, 10 years maybe. So this was but
well, I totally understand they make that change.
Yeah,
I fully support that. I think,
totally. I would really like to see a tool where the developer side is like totally free, but if you add the admin UI, you have to pay for it, right? That would be like a nice pricing model, also for like the community and to get people to use it. So I don't know.
Right. This is like, again, about a bit like developer experience and supporting developers and agencies and building cool new stuff, right? Instead of restricting it for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, there's something now. There's something else now, just because I think we haven't talked about this yet, but from WP Engine, who are doing a lot of work in the WordPress ecosystem, also like pushing things forward. And they have this headless hosting option, and they also have a headless framework called a Faust.js, which is built on Next.js. And they have this Atlas content modeler thing. So, and because this type of like content modeling is really important for headless stuff as well, right? So also with our approach, you can easily just write a couple of things and you have a headless, a couple of definitions, and then you have like a headless CMS or headless fields that are more structured than the usual WordPress post content thing. So yeah, and I see this as something where in the future, like a lot of people could benefit from a universal solution that is available freely.
And what I'm wondering about that is, like, WordPress always had custom fields, right?
Meta fields, yeah.
Meta fields. And I remember using them. I remember using them in a way that even when I used the classic editor, that was for general content on the page, and then I added meta fields for custom options for that page. It's just the UI never developed beyond this point of being key value and the value being like a text input. I think why didn't they like improve this further, like giving it nicer options, nicer UI? It doesn't look like it would be too far away, kind of. But yeah, instead, everyone else is building their complete new UI elements and yeah, whatsoever. Okay, they didn't do that, but custom fields still exist even with Gutenberg, right? I think. So it's a bit weird to me. And there are solutions out there, competing solutions to ACF, and we looked at some of those over the time. And I think there are even free ones, right? Why did we never use them?
Yeah, why we never use them?
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, not all of them have like this flexible content field. There's a great Excel list of like from Compare WP. We put that in the show notes. And the rest is just not as, it doesn't feel as streamlined. For a long time, there was like carbon fields, or for some time, and carbon fields, it's built on React, and it has like an easier integration with blocks and so on. But this is also like, this is just basically a small company that developed that, and you don't know how good the support is. There are a lot of open issues on GitHub. It doesn't seem that it's heavily developed further. So, yeah.
Well, to be fair, ACF was built and maintained for a long time just by Elliot Connon, right?
Yes.
One person. He just happened to be by far the most successful one. And so it wasn't like questioned a lot. It's just like, okay, everyone's using this, so that looks safe. But I told you earlier, this is kind of ridiculous, because what if something happened? If he wouldn't be able to, if he lost the keys to the repo, or like to think about something less dramatic, but like this truck factor of being one for such a huge project, that is kind of ridiculous if you look at it. But I think that's not too uncommon for open source projects and even other commercial projects, where I think I, as a developer, and many people I talk to, many times think, oh, there must be a huge company, and then it's like, oh, it's one or two people running this whole thing that's used by millions of people on websites and so on, which is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, that's true. And just to like mention a few others, there's the POTS framework, there's CMB2, right? So I found the Excel list, so I can quickly show it also for the YouTube. So we have ACF, we have custom post type UI, which is just for creating custom post types. We have MetaBox, then we have the CMB2, POTS, Textopress. Like you see how many frameworks there are that do that work with meta fields, or with with meta fields, and give you like some UI on top of that, or some easier API to configure it. And for us, like the most important part is down here, flexible, repeatable fields. That's what they call it in their comparison. Yeah, flexible, repeatable fields. So there's not a lot of
not many
carbon
have
fields.
that.
Yeah, not many
all
have
of
that.
them have that. Like,
that's the thing, because
yes, via Pro, yes, via extension.
Yeah. Maybe, and some of them also look like quite old, right? So you'd have to like re-implement the UI sort of, and make it nicer to use. Yeah, difficult topic. So we are very happy with ACF, what they offer, right? Just like the licensing model for a free like starter theme for developers is.
And I think that's so interesting. I'm just like learning something again about this myself in this moment, because I'm looking at some of those solutions again, and then like those that provide this flexible, repeatable fields approach, which is important for us for this component approach. I'm seeing a type broker, and it's like, okay, what's that? And then, version 5.011. What's a bit puzzling then is like it says in the WordPress directory, active installations 10. And then I'm like, what's going on there? Is this like more a code solution?
No, but TypeRocket is more like it's a framework. Okay. It's like a starter theme with more built on top, right? It's like your complete solution.
Right. Okay,
Where
that's
we-
also this whole framework approach. I think I've been on that website a couple of times, and
yeah.
I think I always like their approach. They have this sidebar with small screenshots, right?
Yes, exactly.
This is I always like this a lot. I think that was more like, okay, we have to go down this, or if we go down this route, it's like a full commitment to their approach, kind of, and then we would build our approach still on top, which is a little different. So this isn't very pluggable for us.
Yeah.
I think carbon fields always felt more like being one of those candidates that would be more pluggable, right?
Yeah, definitely. And there are just like a couple of things probably that you need to work on and maybe like improve. Like ACF has like an awesome like this UI feature, right? Where you get like I know Ajax loaded drop downs and so on. I think this stuff is not implemented in Carbon in such a way. So, but this is not something that, like, it's an open source project, so we could contribute to that as well, right? I just I hate reinventing the wheel, sort of. So that's why we would rather contribute to Carbon fields than to start our own thing, probably.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe with the Fields API, because that's actually what the Fields API wanted to achieve, like a couple, like these
being
6-7
better
years ago.
meta fields.
Yeah, they but then Gutenberg came along, and now the like meta fields are not as important anymore, kind of. But like talking about data modeling, and like one thing that we haven't really talked about yet, like there's still, like, this is more for structured data, right? And we use it also for blog posts, where you then rearrange components as well. And it's a little bit like blocks in Gutenberg. But, and this is something that we also said, like the experience for writing larger pieces of content is actually better in Gutenberg, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is kind of hard because, like, you maybe want to use some component inside of Gutenberg, and then you maybe want to use it in a more structured way, right? So,
yeah, it would be like a lot of the data modeling is about creating those fields and UI for very specific custom coded, custom designed components. And to come up with just the right amount of fields and information you need to enter and the right amount of options that you can change to still adjust that component to give it like a unique design and feeling within the website, or different unique theme, like choosing between a light theme and a dark theme, all these kind of things. And at the same time, not giving like, all the options, like being able to change everything. And that's where like we're kind of not complying with Gutenberg in many cases, where it's trying to be more of this page builder that gives you all the options. But for us, data modeling is a lot about controlling the options and giving a reasonable amount of options that creates in the end a nice user interface. For me, as coming from a front-end development background, data modeling is more about the UI side of things, of creating a great user interface. I don't care too much about how the data is structured in the database itself, as long as it is accessible to me as a developer and I can query it where I need. Of course, that's very important. But yeah, I'm thinking more about creating a simple to use UI interface for the editor.
yeah, that's it.
Is that it?
I could go on because we haven't talked about global options, translatable options, and like other stuff. But
I think this sounds like another topic. We could, of course, go on talking about global fields, global and translatable options. This could be a new topic. Let's do that in the next one.
okay.